Hello. So this is a demo of the ICE-ODS system that has been designed in collaboration with a number of industry partners. The requirements for the system were fleshed out through a number of extensive interviews with industry partners. And while this still is a prototype system, it is hopefully gives the industry partners a helpful idea of what a final system would look like. So I'm just going to go through each element of the system, and I'll talk through why and how each element of the system meets the requirements that were discussed, and some of the novelties of the system. So I guess the first thing to say is that the data set that is being used within the system that's being demonstrated is the SWOT data set, which is basically a data set from the University of Singapore. It's of the water treatment test bed. Now, the reason we've chosen that is because it is the biggest and the most realistic data set that we had available to us. So a few things to note to begin with. Obviously, because this is a data set and not a live data being fed through, what we thought would be helpful is to allow users to just go through the time in the data set and select what they want to see. Now, if this was a real system, this top banner with the time allowing users to skip through different days and times would not be there. But for the purposes of replaying a data set, we have kept the time banner at the top. So if we go, for example, to 510, what you find, the first page that we're looking at here is an overview page. Now, this page allows you to see the traffic from the source as well as the destination. You have the source IP address on the x-axis. Over here, you've got the destination IP address. What we have here is the port number. And again, this is destination port. So if you hover over, you can see the communication both on the source side and the destination side. Now, the size of the bubble is currently encoded using the number of bytes in the communication, and there's a reason for that. The reason is one of the most important things that our industry partners said they want to see is whether firmware is being transferred over the network, whether there's any big communications happening, basically. And so by encoding the source bytes, you'll be able to see if there's an abnormally large communication. And helpfully with industrial control systems, the communications are very regular. They tend to be very repetitive. So it is fairly straightforward to spot something that's out of the ordinary. So we've got a little tooltip that also just shows exactly which port it is and exactly the destination port, which is also highlighted on the destination side. So that's just an overview page, and we have another one as well, which is simply a network table. There are a few small differences between this and, for example, a table you'd see on Wireshark. One is that each of the fields can be encoded with colors displaying how malicious or benign the communication is, and that our participants felt would be very, very helpful. Now, for the purpose of this prototype, we have simply limited that to 2 fields, which is the packet size. Of course, we could have color-coded each and every field, but that we felt would probably be a little bit of a distraction. We just want to show what is capable rather than the an entire finished solution. Now, what we've encoded here is the mean packet size from the source and the destination. And so what you have is the darker the blue, the less malicious. And the way that the system is determining whether the traffic is malicious or not is we're basically using a machine learning algorithm and extracting from the machine learning algorithm the actual parameters that it uses. So for example, with the machine learning algorithm, we inquired of the machine learning algorithm what it felt was a malicious value for the mean packet size and what it felt was a clean value, and then encoded that into color. So while this is quite a simplistic visualization, as you can see here, this is white. So that obviously indicates that's heading towards potentially being malicious. If there's any in red, which there aren't over here, that would mean they are malicious. Now, while it's quite a simplistic visualization, it does encode a large amount of complexity. It encodes basically what a machine learning algorithm is saying about a field with regards to its contribution to making the traffic malicious or not. And this could be done for every single field, of course, but that would probably be part of a discussion with more operators as to what fields they would find the most useful. We obviously knew that the mean packet size would be a very useful field given its relevance with regards to the number of bytes being transferred and whether firmware is being transferred. But beyond that, we'll probably need to speak to even more engineers. So that's mainly the two overview pages. And though, yes, they are fairly simplistic, they do encode a lot of complex functionality. The next page that's relevant is the device page. Now, devices displayed here are all the internal devices, and currently they're listed by IP address, which probably isn't the most informative, but then once you click on the IP address, you can get all the information you want. The reason for using IP address is that is also how devices are identified in the overview page. So if you then want to examine a particular IP address within the overview page, you could quickly find it in devices. And once you click on the device page, you can find plenty of information that identifies that device. And one of the most important bits, though, again, not necessarily immediately obvious, one of the most important bits is this second half of the page, which shows the SWOT datasets process. So this is a high-level diagram of the SWOT dataset process. So you have raw water coming in and then being treated through a number of different processes, ultrafiltration, reverse osmosis, and then finally the treated water going back out. And what this diagram shows as well is when we click on the device, it highlights in red where that device is operating. So this device is operating at the point in which 3 chemicals are introduced into the raw water. So this can be immediately helpful in showing exactly what that device is responsible for. And if I clicked on a different device, for example, if I clicked on 10, you'd see this device actually operates at the beginning of the process. And also a helpful visualization that we've created is if you click, so this shows the average number of source bytes and source packets that's being sent out, the source destination bytes that's being received, and packets being received. Now, obviously, the numbers themselves can, to many people, be quite meaningless. So what we thought would be helpful is by clicking on any one of these, you see how that compares to the rest of the internal devices. So you see a lot of devices don't do very much communication at all. That's because many of them are backup devices. But you can see that this device in particular, the one that we've highlighted, the one that is also highlighted in purple, is doing a large amount of communication, the most compared to all the other devices, which might be okay, but it's just something to be aware of. If you click on destination bytes, you see it also receives the most, and you see it also receives most packets, which is probably a good thing because it means while it's receiving a lot of bytes, it is receiving a lot of packets, so those packets themselves aren't particularly big. And that's a few other things. So that's really the device page. And I guess the most important bit of the device page would be the highlighting of where the device exists. What a lot of systems contain is they will contain, for example, information about device, very technical information, but they won't contain the high level information showing how that device functions within the actual process. And so one way we thought we could show that is by showing where in a high level diagram that device is found. So the last page to show is the alerts page. So alerts are categorized by critical, high, medium, low. This is just a standard method of categorizing alerts and is used by a lot of security organizations. So for the purposes of this demo, there is one alert we have already created. Now this alert is based on real data, and it is an alert that was detected by the machine learning algorithm. So what we're showing in this one is basically a number of details about the alert. So we've got obviously the time the alert occurred. So as you can see, it is a historical alert. Obviously, if you kept playing through the data, you could potentially come across another alert. But for the purposes of demo, we're just showing one that already exists. So it tells you the time the alert occurred, and then it gives you a severity level. Now, the severity is calculated based on the devices that are actually involved. And the reason being, the more devices involved, potentially the more processes involved. So not only are we looking at the devices involved, but we're also looking at are each of these devices from different processes. So in this case, there are a fair few devices involved, but some of them do belong to the same process. And so in those cases, it's actually, so these two belong to the same process, whereas these three are separate processes, but they each follow on from one another. So there's a sort of cascading effect. What you'll notice as well, there's a confidence in the prediction. That is a confidence obtained from the machine learning algorithm. So it's 92% confident that this is malicious. And then there's a potential output. This is again based on a number of calculations. It's based on the number of processes that are affected and based also on obviously how important those processes are. So here we list the devices involved, and the devices, the names of devices can sometimes feel a little bit unintuitive. So what we've done then is provide a name of device and a description of what it does. So if you look, it says that the time the attack starts is 1:10 p.m. So to allow an analyst to actually figure out whether that is actually the case, whether it does look like there's an attack happening at 1:10, they can zoom in. Now, if you look here, this is for device P206, nothing has really changed. But if you look at FIT 301, the device that measures the flow of water in the ultrafiltration stage, if you zoom in to the sort of 1:10 p.m. mark, you quickly see that something changes quite drastically at that point. And so that can be quite a helpful indicator as to where the attack is occurring or what the attack is affecting. And likewise, you can zoom in to any one of these visualizations at any point in time, allowing you to see exactly what's going on. So another thing to note about the alert page is while the potential output is measured in the output loss is measured in obviously not the water, because this is a water treatment plant, this could very easily have been pence or pounds or dollars. But we felt it'd be more appropriate to, I guess, measure the impact of an attack based on the amount of water output that it would be reduced by. So those are the main elements of the system we've created. What I guess this covers most of the sort of front end, obviously, there's a lot that happens in the back end to make this possible. Large amounts of these details are created, as I've said, by a machine learning algorithm. So thank you for listening. Thank you for your attention, and goodbye.